This is Biological Changes Part 6, Timing of Puberty. So I've already said this a few times in the prior videos, but it's really important to know that it can be very misleading to talk about an average age or for the timing or the tempo of puberty. So there's no specific average age for the onset or duration of all of puberty. However, medically speaking, we can say that the typical onset in a developed country is usually between the ages of 8 and 13 for girls and 9 and 14 for boys. But early development can happen. And early development is known as precocious puberty, and late development is known as delayed puberty. In girls, the interval between the first sign of puberty and the completion of puberty can be as short as a year and a half or as long as 6 years. And in boys, that interval compares to ranges from as short as 2 years to as long as 5 years. So this means that some people have reached full physical maturation before others have even started, or some might be in the early stages or whatever. So it really is important to stress the fact that there is no normal. Everybody is different. There's also no relationship between the age at which puberty begins and the rate at which the development proceeds. Although we do see that late maturers on average tend to be taller than early maturers, and early maturers kind of end up with more weight on them. They're heavier than late maturers, especially so in females. We see more statistics that show that for females. In the United States, we also see that there's ethnic differences in the timing and rate of maturation. For instance, Black girls mature significantly earlier than Latinx girls, who then in turn mature even earlier than white girls. So we see those ethnic differences. Okay, let's talk about those genetic and environmental influences on the timing and tempo of puberty. For the most part, the timing and tempo of puberty is inherited. So it's very heavily genetic. Genetic predisposition is kind of best thought of as like an upper and lower age limit, not a fixed absolute number. And I said that in a prior video as well. In terms of environmental factors, they definitely do play a role as well. There's two key environmental influences that exist. The first one is nourishment, and the second one is health. So puberty occurs earlier in those who are better nourished. Delayed puberty is more likely among those with a history of protein and calorie deficiency. Chronic illness and excess exercise even can also cause a delay in puberty, or actually it's linked to a delay in puberty. Let's not make a correlation causation there and say it correctly. So let's say it one more time. Excess exercise is linked with delayed puberty. There is something called the secular trend. You've definitely heard me mention it in prior videos. I mentioned it last module as well. The secular trend is this tendency over the past 2 centuries or so for individuals to be larger in stature and therefore to reach puberty earlier. Mainly, we're thinking that the secular trend is due to improvements in health and nutrition. In most European countries, maturation has become earlier by about 3 to 4 months per decade. That's significant. This graph uses the year of menarche as the indicator for onset of puberty. This trend can actually be applied to boys as well, because we do see in developing countries a strong positive correlation between early developing girls and early developing boys. Even so, studies have shown that boys are developing earlier as well. One study looked at reports from European children choir. This is a really cool study, and your book mentions it as well. So they're looking at children's European choirs, and there's a significant amount of data that was collected, because what they were looking at was the age at which a boy in the choir experiences their voice breaking and therefore no longer able to be a soprano or maybe even an alto. And so that they are associating with a sign of puberty. So the studies show that the average age in when the child or when the boy, his voice broke, and therefore we're saying that that's the start of puberty or that's the sign of puberty. The studies show that the average age dropped from 18 in the mid 1700s to 10 today. So that shows that secular trend in boys as well. So what in the world is causing this secular trend? I did say that there are, there mainly seem to be the improvements in health and nutrition, but why is this so dramatic? Well, a lot of things are causing this, really. The largest reason might be because of an increase in obesity, right? We're seeing an increase in obesity, which then affects the leptin levels, which then affect the kisspeptin levels, which then cause the onset of puberty to happen sooner. Another reason could be exposure to man-made chemicals and things like cosmetics, food, even just around you in the environment. Another reason could be an increased exposure to artificial light, which means melatonin is being secreted. So why is this even a bad thing? Or is it a bad thing? Well, the major concern that we have here is that certain hormones are going to affect the developing brain, which can then make the adolescent more inclined to engage in sensation-seeking behaviors. And then these behaviors, which are quite risky, can happen. Brain systems that control self-regulation, they're not as influenced by puberty. And so then we have this big imbalance. So this means there's this increase in thrill-seeking urges at the same time that there is very little development in self-control and impulse control and self-regulation. This is a very big problem. So we're seeing significant increases in risky and reckless behaviors, and therefore we're seeing increase in adolescent mortality rates. And that's going to conclude this video.